Okay, today we're going to create a single node OpenShift cluster in AWS. This will allow you to create an inexpensive cluster that you can use to learn and test things on. Yeah, so let's dive into it. The first thing you're going to need is you're going to need a Red Hat account subscription so you can download software. You'll also need an AWS account because we're going to be working in an AWS account. As you can see, I'm already logged in on the right. So what are we going to create today? We're going to create an EC2 instance. We'll subscribe this instance to Red Hat. We'll install dependencies, install single node OpenShift cluster, and we'll follow that up with a sample application, and we'll be done. Right, let's move on. So just sign into your AWS account. You'll need either a root user or an IAM user. Get yourself signed in. Okay, now that you signed in, let's go ahead. So the first step is make sure you're in US East 1, North Virginia. The next thing is you can search for EC2 on the services, launch instance, launch the instance. Let's find the AMI. It's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to look in community AMIs. Let's search for that. There we go. Select that AMI. I'm going to select a T2 large, but you can play around with different instance sizes depending on how much money you'd like to spend. But as we're installing everything on one node, maybe a medium or large would do it. You could try small if you like. Let's move on. Just select one instance. Another thing you need to make sure is that you assign a public IP address. That's all we need there. Add storage. We can leave the storage as is, 10 gigabytes. Let's add a tag. Let's call this name. Let's call it single node cluster. I might complain about that because I've used it before. Okay, it was fine with that. Let's now configure the security groups. Just going to copy this. I have to type it all out. Create a new security group. Oops, I don't copy. Single node SG. Let's use the same for the description. Okay, so now we need to add some security groups. Let's flip over to the next slide. It's easier to see. Add a rule. We've got SSH. So let's just add in HTTP. On port 80, open to everything. Let's add in HTTPS. Because we're going to be using that 443, open to everything. Now let's add a custom TCP IP rule on port 8443. And we need that open to the world for this demo. You can tighten up your security. Let's tighten up the SSH to my IP. So we don't allow everybody to access SSH. Okay, so we got port 22, port 80, port 443, port 8443. Let's move on. Review and launch. We got all the ports there. Got our server, instance size type. Let's launch that. We're going to need a key pair. So let's create a new key pair. It's going to go back to here and copy this. Let's make that a single node KP. Whoops. Change the name. I think I've used that key pair. Doesn't want to download it, so let's download KP1 and launch the instance. Okay, we're going to have to just go back and change that because that security group exists already. So we'll just change that to 1 to 1. We have a single node key pair 1, which we downloaded. We have that, so let's launch instances. Alrighty, so the instance is in the pending mode, and we need to get that running. So while that's going, I'm going to pause the video until it's up and running. Okay, so our instance is up and running. Let's use PuTTY because we're going to use PuTTY. So we need to convert the PEM file to a PPK file. So we need PuTTY. We're going to load that key pair. Should be in downloads somewhere. Oops. It's a PEM file, so we need to select all files. So we're going to select the single node KP1 that we created. Loaded it up. We're going to save it as the private key. We're going to save this key without a passphrase. So what did we call that? Single node KP1, and this is going to be a PPK file that we can use with PuTTY. Alright, so that's done. Let's open PuTTY. So we need to log in as EC2 user. We're going to fetch the IP address. We're going to set that, load that PPK file to PuTTY. Whoops, we're going to rename that. Alrighty, so let's SSH. Now we SSH'd into the instance that we just created for our single node cluster. So we're going to now move this across there. Let's try and make that a bit bigger. Okay. Put the EC2 there. I'm going to do this. Alrighty, so we're in here now. Let's switch to the root user. We're gonna update the instance. This will take a little while, so I'm going to pause the video until it's done. Okay, now that that's finished, go and reboot. I've already rebooted and SSH back into the EC2 instance, which I've already done. Just check to make sure the EC2 instance is running again after you reboot it before you SSH back in. Alrighty, so let's go back and switch to the root user. And let's run uname just to check. And we are running a version higher than 106 Oops, didn't work so well. We are running a version higher than 106.2, so let's move on. Okay, next step is to subscribe to the Red Hat, to the instance to Red Hat. So we just execute a couple of commands. Do the register command, and you need your username, password. That's the username and password for your Red Hat subscription. Just takes a little while. Should come back in a moment. Seem to be a little slow today. Let's give it a while. I'm not going to pause the video because it could come back any while. Okay, the system has been registered. So we're all good there. We have we registered. Let's refresh all the local data. All local data refreshed. Run the next command. And we should get some output at the product name and the subscription status. It's taking a little while today. So there we go. We have the subscribed product, Red Hat Enterprise Linux Server. Right, now we can move on. So the next thing, we got to enable the repository. Gonna pause the video for a while. Okay, let's make sure we're recording again. Yes, and that command came back and it's enabled for the system. Okay, let's go ahead and install Docker. We need Docker as prerequisite. Going to again stop the video and come back when it's done. Alrighty, we're back again. Docker's installed. Let's just go back. Okay, it's complete. Okay, so let's run some more commands for Docker. Gonna start Docker. We're gonna enable Docker. Done. And let's check the status before we move on. That's important. We need Docker running. Active running. So look for the active running. So that's good. The next thing we're going to need is wget. It's installing. Okay, wget's complete. Let's move on. Okay, the next thing we've got to do is we've got to configure the daemon, Docker daemon. So we're going to use VI for that. Okay, so just add this insecure registries with that IP address to the daemon.json. Let's get out of there. save it. Let's just make sure we've done that correctly. Okay, so we have make sure you spell that right. Registries, I've spelled that wrong in the past. Okay, so now we can go and restart the Docker daemon. Now that we've changed that registry. Restart Docker. And again, make sure it's up and running. Let's check the status. Oops, just going to pause a while and sort out this issue. Okay, so I just fixed that daemon.json file and I restarted Docker. Fine, messed up the file. And let's check the status of Docker once more. And it's active running. Okay, moving on. Now we're ready to install OpenShift. So let's first change directory to the root. Okay, so we've gonna execute W again, and I got a little something in front of the W. Alrighty, so we've copied the binaries. We're gonna just run a couple of commands to get these to where we want them to be. Let's do a tar. Change the directories. We're in the directory. Let's move the OpenShift cluster binaries. Let's move the kubectl binaries. Alrighty, change directory. We can get rid of the stuff now that we these files that we no longer need. Alrighty. Let's make sure my recording is working. Yes, all good. Alright, let's just verify the OpenShift cluster version. Perfect. We're in 3.1 Kubernetes and all set to go. So we've installed OpenShift. Now we've got to still do some more stuff. So now we are going to start the cluster. Before we do that, let me minimize the terminal and open AWS. Just maximize that so it's easy to see. So for our server, we need to get some details. So the first thing we're going to need is the public DNS, which is up here. Just copy that. You can go in here and delete that. And I've added in the public DNS. We also going to need the IP address. Once the public IP address, the command for xip.io. And we can copy that. Okay, so we're done with the console. Let's go back to our terminal. And again, I'm just making sure our recording is working properly. Yes, that is. And we are starting up our cluster. This will take a few minutes. I think I'll just pause for a while that starts up so we can get through this quicker. Okay, so we've started up the OpenShift cluster, our single node cluster. Just at the end of it, you just need to copy this data. The server is accessible through the web console. Copy that URL. You can get this the credentials to log in as developer or as administrator. Okay, so the cluster is up and running. And we have the output we need to move forward. So let's go on. What we're going to do, just do a couple of little OpenShift configurations. So we've logged in as admin, and we have we can access these projects. What's all the projects we have inside our OpenShift cluster right now. You can check the manuals to get more information on those. Let's create a new user called myadmin. We've created that. We'll link it to a role, an admin role. So we've added the role for myadmin. By default, the authentication is allow all. So it allows any user with a non-blank password to log in. So you can just set any password you want when you log in. Okay, so we've done that. Let's move on. So now we're going to go and access the console. To do that, we need to go back to the slide where I entered that. The tricky part is don't just use that. What you got to do is make sure you add on console. Otherwise, you will have some fun and games trying to start it up. Okay, we need a browser. Let's see if we can get this to run in Google. We don't have a certificate, so we're just going to have to accept a few things. That's because we don't have the certificate, but we're going to proceed anyway. And we are into the console. Now, remember we set our user for this to, I think it was myadmin. Did I set that? Let's just try it. I'll do the same. And we are in. So we're getting close to done. We've configured OpenShift. We have it running. We logged into OpenShift and we're into the console. So now we can actually fire off a sample application. So let's attempt that. So let's do just select in Nginx. Sometimes there's two versions. I just want to make sure I got the right one. Looks like there's only one version here, so let's hope that one worked. So what we're going to do, we're going to use this, we're going to get this from Nginx from the sample repository on GitHub, just to make this easy. So we'll go next. We'll add this to a project. I want to create a project. Let's add it to my project. call it Nginx 1. And then we're just going to use the sample repository for the sample. Great. And we have the build going. So let's go and look at the project overview. And as you can see, the build is in progress. We do have a URL, so we can access our application. I don't think we can do it yet. Let's just try. I think it's still, yep, it's still building. So let's copy that URL. Oh, we can see the build going. We need the build to finish, and we will be able to access our application. There we go. We got one pod up and running with one container. Well, let's make that 2, and let's see if our application works. And there we go. We are accessing our Nginx server on our OneNode OpenShift cluster. Thank you very much. Set this up. It's affordable and does not take too long. And once you're up and running, you can get into the console and explore all the different areas, how applications build, resources, etc., etc. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.